Everyone?
How are you doing? You okay?
Hi.
Yeah, Tom. Good, thank you.
Hey, thank you for joining.
Apologies if there's a bit of background noise. I'm at the Excel. I have to go and do some talking stuff at the smart buildings show. A bit late, so there might be a bit of background noise.
No worries at all. That's perfectly fine. We can't hear anything. At least I can't hear anything. But thank you very much for joining. Yeah, I'd like to get us started. Oh, thank you for being so punctual. Everyone on time is very impressive. Thank you for making it. My name is Happy Dugiti. I will be your moderator for today. I'm going to try and talk as little as possible, just giving you all the time to discuss your ideas, challenges, and topics that you have brought forward. I'd like to get us started with a round of intros, if that's okay, and maybe just an icebreaker too. If you could tell us who you are, the organization you come from, and if you could name something positive maybe out of the lockdown, given that it has kind of like changed the way that we live and work, etc. I'd say for myself, it's been amazing seeing the team transform, just being able to work from home, something that I thought is just never possible, especially in our industry. And also I have been a bit more present with family, weirdly. So just being able to pick up the phone and have conversations, etc. So that's been amazing from my side. I'd say that's the positive. Lorenz, you joined first, so I'll start with you if that's okay. A tiny bit about yourself, the organization, and something positive you could name from the lockdown, if possible. Thank you.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Lawrence. I work with SSC in Highland. I'm based out of Highland, Dublin, the Dublin office, I would say. But my role is basically the strategy and innovation as a strategic innovation analyst for SSC, both in GB and also in Highland. And as SSC, we're not just an electricity retailer. We are also moving into the solutions provision side. So trying to provide solutions for our customer that's transitioning from just a basic retailer. And yeah, and something positive from the lockdown is, I would say, is it's the lockdown in as much as possible. It's was a very difficult period for everyone, but I would say it has given opportunity to so many people to embrace technology and to see embrace technology with an open mind. So that's something positive I would take from the lockdown.
All right, sounds really good. Thank you very much for being here today. Darren, over to
Thank
you.
you.
Same question.
Morning, everyone. So Darren Coleman, work for Anglian Water. I'm a system performance manager. Basically look after data, trying to drive value from it within the water business stream. We do reach across into water recycling as well, and we're kind of slowly expanding into that side to really support the goals of the business. And obviously the supporting of the goals is really important for Anglian Water in making sure we're spending the right money, customers' money in the right areas. Really, I suppose that the most beneficial piece for me is the walk and talk. So although we've gone this digital transformation with Anglian Water very quickly through COVID, getting people working from home very quickly and teams created and all these kind of groups, what's really been beneficial is when we do come together, we don't always go and sit in a meeting room. Do you know what? We'll go and meet at Graffham Reservoir and go and do a walk and talk. We'll walk for a couple of miles and we're making the meeting really positive at both sides. It relaxes it a little bit more. We're able to sort of chat away, how was the football, how was this, but actually you still get what you needed to at the end of the result that you needed to for a meeting. It's been really positive. I can't talk. When it's raining, it's not great, don't get me wrong, but when the weather's nice, it's really good. When the weather's nice, it's really good.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Darren. Thanks for being here today. Tom, over to you.
Hi, everyone. So Tom Woolley, I'm the Product and Strategy Director at SMS PLC. So SMS, not very well known, but we're a fairly decent sized company that fits smart meters on behalf of energy suppliers. So we install about 40,000 to 50,000 a month on behalf of various different energy suppliers. And my role is, it started out very technical and making sure that we were enabling energy suppliers to deliver on a rollout. And it's now branched out into new assets. So we now fund everything from tiny smart meters up to buying a field and filling it with container ship-sized batteries and managing those for grid-scale battery solutions, and now everything in between as well with domestic batteries and solar. The big focus of mine at the moment is actually I get to use the smart meter ecosystem that we've rolled out as a kind of an ecosystem for data that drives all of those other propositions. So that's quite exciting now. And we're now at a point where actually energy data isn't just for energy suppliers. I spend more time talking to people outside of the energy industry about energy data. Yeah, that's me. And I guess it's positive from lockdown, I guess, was a bit chaotic for us. So I had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old and a pregnant wife. So
That's a lot.
so that was a lot. One thing we did do though with my 2 boys was we built an outdoor pizza oven in the garden. So that was good fun. And then we used that a lot. So, yeah, that's good.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Tom. Thanks for being here today.
Yes.
I'd love a pizza oven, actually, now that you've mentioned it. Can't have it. Yeah, over to you, Graham.
So Graham Wright, Chief Digital Officer for the utilities sector within Fujitsu. So yeah, I suppose my job is reasonably simple. It's to identify and understand our customers and the problems they have. So my job is to love the problem and then see if there's something that we can do about it. So yeah, so that's where I start with. Everything is about identifying a problem that either ourselves or our sort of ecosystem can help solve. So it's really easy. And then, something positive about lockdown, probably a little bit like Darren, not necessarily the lockdown itself or working remotely and moving to Teams sort of as your almost your primary interface, but actually I think it's what's happened after that now, which is, offices have been reconfigured to be far more, particularly sort of our offices, they're not meeting rooms, but they are workspaces for collaboration. So we only go into the office to collaborate, and the offices have been reconfigured to do that. So not necessarily meeting rooms, but open spaces with work areas, etc., and very little actual sort of hot desk seating type stuff. It's all about how do you get people together and talk. And but I did notice Darren's point about the sort of walk and talk. I actually saw one of your colleagues, Darren, Doug from metering, and the other day, and he'd just been out cycling around Grafham Water for a team meeting. So yeah.
Yeah, it's been a really positive change. It really has, and it's not forced. It's just become natural. It really has.
Yeah. The fact that a management team can go out and just have a cycle ride together around a lake is a reservoir actually, but I think it's incredible. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Graham, for being here today. I'd like to get us started with the discussion, but just a quick reminder, it's a private session, so not broadcasted. Feel free to just share with us whatever you feel comfortable sharing, any questions you'd like to ask. I'm going to treat each topic as rounds, so starting with topic 1 as round 1, but please feel free to raise your hand and ask any questions in the meantime. The very first topic for today, what strategies can businesses implement to ensure that their IT systems align with sustainability goals and contribute to emissions reduction? Darren, I'll start with you since you kind of like started talking a tiny bit about transformations in your organization, and then I'll move across the group again. Please feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to be the next one to speak, and I'll post the question on the chat as well, just so everyone can see. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a really important point that you raise there in terms of the question. We're going through this transformation, and sometimes we're not quite clear what that transformation is. Is it for people, or is it around actually the infrastructure and the architecture that we need to support our asset base, which then ultimately supports our people? So if we get it both right, we ultimately are successful. What we're really conscious of is actually we are very rich in data, very rich in data. And a lot of people that I speak to say, you know, that's brilliant, that's excellent. But what it does do is that we are ingesting awful amounts of data that currently have no value for us, or we cannot show value. So we are really, in terms of systemizing what we're doing, our engine's running at full pace when actually it doesn't need to be. We've got servers full. We're trying, do we expand on-prem servers? Do we go more cloud? There's lots of thinking here around actually, where do we draw the line? That the amount of data that we either have to ingest, or is there a more sensible approach to using some of the legacy data and be more, if we want to go into advanced analytics, we want to go into more of the AI world, actually, is there something there that can give us a better outcome, a better visual than trying to put more and more sensors on, more and more items of, dare I say it, lumps of metal in places that we have to then pull more data from to then try and analyze again. So it's a real difficult piece that we're in, and we're very much on those first steps of trying to understand it. We haven't got the answers, definitely haven't got the answers, but we're trying to prove that we're thinking about it. And I think that's the most important bit with our teams. Give us the space to think about it, give us the confidence with yourselves to challenge, etc., and we'll get there. But we're definitely on the early steps.
Thank you very much, Darren. Tom, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a massive challenge, something we've really faced over the last few years, really. And actually, so I split it into 3 areas. One was systems, and how do we make our systems sing, and the other one was pace, and the biggest one was actually culture. It's a 25-year-old company, big PLC, very, very difficult to move quickly, and also the business has a huge reliance on operational beat rate to keep the rest of the business going. So the strategy that I actually implemented was to set up a completely new team and a completely new entity, and almost enable me to act like a startup within a PLC. And that meant that I was able to then go and work with third parties. So I ended up with kind of vertical pillars of a big PLC balance sheet backing me, but actually able to act like a startup outside of the BAU, or the beast, if you like. And that enabled me to work with startup companies, third parties who were already innovative in the space. And then once I've kind of proved, it allowed me to do 2 things. One, to go after some R&D funding and activity, and we've been quite successful in a number of the government's kind of net zero innovation fund projects. And that's harbored a completely new culture, because it's allowed me to bring in new people, some graduates and people that are kind of big thinkers and stuff like that, right? That have never necessarily been embedded in the energy industry, which is a shame in one aspect, but actually in terms of that middle point that I pointed out about pace, very, very difficult to move at pace when you've got startups that seems to be so easy to go and get funding these days to be able to go and set up a business and start and attack the industry. So I was able to do that and act very, very quickly, almost like a startup, and work with companies that perhaps I had lots of arguments with the exec teams that we should be doing this ourselves. But then when I put the question back to them, okay, how long is it going to take me to get a new energy data app enriched with machine learning and AI built? Because I could go and sign these guys up and be live in 2 months. Right? So that kind of approach has got us on the front step. And there is the next challenge we've got is when I make those business as usual and they do become kind of commodity products, and it falls out of my area of new product development, stuff like that, embedding that into the business is one challenge with a systems aspect. But actually, the biggest benefit we've got is I've built a culture to be able to receive it into the business, because I've brought in some new, young, excited talent into the business that can go and work with these innovators. And actually, because you're backed by a balance sheet, you can act more aggressive than the startup could. And that's been really, really powerful, and enabled us to do stuff in the space of sort of 2 years that would have probably taken us 6 or 7, and we would have been falling behind the rest of the quickly.
Thank you very much, Tom. That's interesting. Have you either seen something like this happen as well in their organization? Maybe a bit of resistance to change from the management? Graham, you're a bit of a chuckle there, probably. Just a huge
there's always resistance to change. It's not necessarily from the management team, but I think it comes from everywhere. I think unless you can sell they understand the outcomes for all of the individuals across the business, and they will be different, and align and explain how what you're doing aligns to what makes their life easier and better. There's always resistance. And that's just the job of good communications and change, to be truthful. But I like the idea of, Tom, I love the idea of getting some people on the inside, on your side, to be able to enable that scale up, because that's the biggest problem. The number of times that I in my sort of life, I see so many pilots and MVPs, and I hate MVPs as a phrase, but more pilots than Heathrow with nothing taking off. Is my fear. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I always kind of reuse this example that we had when we first started this. I had about 6 or 7 job adverts out that went to externally as well as internally, and they were very clearly for the kind of the new age stuff, right? So new kind of driving new product, and all of the people, 30, 40 people that were working on the old product that this was inevitably going to come in and replace, nobody applied for it. I just think that sums it up. You have to create. It is so difficult to change a culture, and unfortunately, what I've found is that using some R&D funding as well as kind of some backing from the exec team and the board, that actually we just put a new culture in, and that now is starting to merge with the legacy teams, if you like, and they're starting to get it and get excited about it. So instead of changing their culture, they've just watched a different culture come in, and that's been massive, right? System stuff is still going to be a problem, and we're going to look at that one day. But actually, in terms of our position in the market, if you think about the kind of Gartner Magic Quadrant, we're up in the top right-hand corner all of a sudden. Yes, it's a bit disjointed because we've got lots of third-party integrations and we've got some outsourcing going on. But actually, that doesn't matter for the market. That gets us a big step forward. And because it's particularly the energy industry, it's the availability. I mean, there's 33 million smart and advanced meters in Great Britain now that are all chucking out half-hourly data, and only about 1% of it's being used. So it's a massive change that the energy industry has never experienced. And if you think you're going to attack that by just using your BAU processes, then good luck to you, because it's you need a completely different set of people and culture to be able to go and attack that. And that's why there's so many startups happening, especially the energy crisis. You saw some free energy apps launch and things like that.
I think it's a good challenge, given that water's about to go through a massive deployment of metering in the next 5 years.
Yeah, it's exactly the same. And just going back to your point around culture, the pace and culture together now is fundamental. You cannot change culture without that pace. People are bored of hearing the same things are coming down the road, and they never quite get there, or they never quite deliver what they thought you would get, because things change over 5 years. Of course they do. Technology changes so quickly. The business plans have to change because there's different pressures, and I think pace is so important for that cultural change.
Hard when you work in a regulated environment there, but
sorry, Lauren.
Right. No problem with that.
It's hard, but that's where the innovation has to come from. That's where you have to lean on that side of it, that strategic innovation, that thinking on it, and then really deliver that disruptive innovation is key.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Yes, Lawrence, your take on the first topic as well.
Yeah, so I just wanted to touch on what Darren has said and what Tom has said as well, because like when you at the energy industry, one thing most customers are used to, and when you're trying to put out strategies, is that most people are used to the legacy system, and this is where it gets complicated. People trying to you're putting out the innovation, but you also need to put in another thing into perspective. Like, are people ready to embrace this thing? And Tom mentioned something about rolling out smart meters, and it's something also that SSE as a whole, when you're trying to, understand, when you're trying to measure sustainability or measure people's carbon footprint, here the smart meter is very important. And there's something we do. We roll out smart meters and this collects data. But in order for us to improve, reduce carbon footprint, we need people to activate their smart meters. But most people are kind of resistant to this and they don't want to do it. They don't want to embrace this. And this becomes complicated. And another thing that plays into this in terms of the legacy system is like we have like a system that is like code and built just for one way. That is, people supply coming from the grid to the homes. But right now, technology has improved. We see people now through the use of the smart meters selling back power back to the grid. So now it's going back and forth. We need to find a way to, improve the system. We people be ready to embrace this, and that's also touching what Darren has said about data and analytics. Data and intelligent use of analytics is very, very important in this instance because it gives us makes us understand where we stand currently as a people in terms of what carbon footprint is and where we need to be as a group or maybe as a company. So having the ability to really measure what we are putting out, like a survey was carried out currently between some companies we provide, and we're trying to talk to them. Okay, you're preaching sustainability, and what you said, COVID, people coming back to the office, people going out. What's the difference between what's your emission? Like, what can you really measure your carbon footprint from when people are in the office and when people are not? And most of these offices cannot do that. They don't know what people using more electricity when they're in your office, but everybody just tends to look at it from the financial aspect. Okay, we are paying more, we're using more electricity, but in terms of emissions, like no one is really measuring that, and that's where and use of analytics becomes very, very important because it gives us like a deep understanding of where we are as a people, where we need to be, what we need to measure.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Graham, obviously you sit on the other side here. You do work with a lot of companies. You see a lot of examples. So your take on IT being aligned with sustainability goals?
So many different viewpoints and sort of ideas that those three conversations have triggered. Actually, it's quite frightening. I think the first one, absolutely get sort of Darren's point around lots of data. Am I getting value from it? And which data can I get value from? I think that's sort of, that's probably one of the biggest challenges because quite often you'll sort of go, actually, if I had this data, that would be really valuable. And it's sort of like, because somebody will come up with a new sort of use case and suddenly you'll realize you don't have that. So what data do you collect? Do you collect everything, or do you go use case by use case? I think that's sort of, probably an interesting strategy, but particularly if you're deploying, sort of when you're deploying sensors, whether there's meters or not, or something else, sort of some SCADA telemetry type sort of solution. And what data do you take back to the center and what do you leave at the edge? A massively complicated area. Not got time to cover half of the issues in that, but I think that's that's sort of one area. I think the other one is probably just, sort of there was a little bit of a discussion around metering, and from both sides, from electricity and water. I think there's sort of two issues that we need to think about that meter data. One is from a, how do I use that information, that data and the insights I can generate to help optimize my assets and operate more effectively. So that's an internal sort of asset to internal operations effectiveness thing. The second one, though, I think, which is certainly, I think, has happened in the electricity side, and probably not until last year, until the invasion of Ukraine. I never looked at my smart meter sort of in home display. Yeah, don't bother me. And water will be the same. When water's £3 a ton, nobody's going to look at how do I stop saving a bit of water. Yeah. And then it's only when something changes, your engagement changes. And I think this is going to be the big challenge, which is how do you generate from the data that's coming available to the company, but to the sort of the consumers, how do you change engagement? Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the key things. And I think with water metering, sort of like sort of if I take the future market about where they're going to sort of like suddenly get hit. It's like suddenly when you deploy water meters and you can see constant flow in somebody's property, or and you're looking at their per capita consumption, and you go, do you realize that you're twice as much as your neighbor, or that actually we think you've got a leak on your property? That's when you can start to change, because sort of you can start to get that engagement, because let's face it, with water, in that water sector, nobody phones up a water company to say, I've just had a great cup of tea or a great bath. Yeah. And it's that, how do you change the engagement to be more interesting? I think we've started to see some of that shift in electricity and gas, but part of that is driven by price. So I think, but that data can be, that one set of data can be used for multiple use cases, and that's the challenge. Yeah. So, Tom,
you're right. You're bang on. The biggest shift, I think, actually, in the electricity and gas space is the acknowledgement from the utility company that it's no longer their data. It's felt like the metering, they spend so much time, money, and effort in deploying meters, and have done for years, since the 90s, right? Since we kind of step right into a competitive marketplace. And actually, the GDPR changes that came in said, actually, no, this isn't your data anymore, it's the consumer's data. You're deploying smart meters, you are paying to deploy smart meters, but if you're trickling down onto consumer bills, it's their ecosystem that you're deploying, right? And what that has enabled is almost open energy data. So it's not that far off what banking went through, in terms of open banking, and that is the really compelling piece, because it's taking the engagement of energy away from the energy suppliers. So you look at the marketplace today, and there are free energy apps like Hugo Energy app and Loop Energy, right? That people are downloading the app stores for free, and it's basically like an IHD on your phone, right? An in-home display on your phone. So, but it's got 12 months worth of historical data, and that's free. It's free. All of that data is free. The energy suppliers are not collecting that data. It's another role that the industry's created. They don't have to pay to collect that data. It's the consumer's data, and that is what's enabling all these startups to emerge. The other really interesting one, actually, which is where we're starting to see the bridge between electricity and gas and water, is a council next year are going to launch their own branded energy app, where there is a smart water meter on site. They'll also have the smart water data. So you'll have a consumer that will have a free energy app delivered by a council that are not actually an energy supplier, but they're providing you insights over your electricity, your gas, and your water consumption. And that's where it starts to become really powerful. And the trick with them that are very excited about it is to actually just calm them down a bit, because they don't know the power of this yet until they start actually collecting it and combining it. And that's where all of the third-party startups and tech innovators and stuff like that, R&D is going to come in to unleash that, because it's a complete unknown as to the level of value you can get from combining those three data sources. And it's never happened before. So it's all because of the energy industry went through a real significant shift where they acknowledged that the energy suppliers, as tough as a life they may have, it's not their data, right? Consumers' data, and they don't get a cut of the price if another player comes in and starts collecting that data that they've effectively enabled.
Thank you very much, Tom. Darren, would you like to add anything from the water supplier's perspective? Or?
I think it's been covered in a way, because you're absolutely right. It's customer data at the end of it. What we want to do is use it to advise ourselves, but also advise back to the customer as well. You know, how can we be better and more efficient? But actually, in the long term, that supports the customer. So either end of that conversation, we need to follow the journey of the data point. Because if we don't, we're gonna lose ourselves a little bit and go, actually, where were we inefficient? Where were we not? So yeah, it's fresh for us. We've got work to do, but we must focus on that end to end. If we don't, then we'll lose out, definitely.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Darren. Would anyone like to add anything before we move on to the second topic? Anything we have not covered? If not, then we're talking about blockchain technology. So how can blockchain technology be effectively utilized to trace the origin of energy sources and prevent greenwashing in supply chain? Tom, is it okay if I start with you on this round, and then I'll move across the group? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, greenwashing in the energy system industry has been a massive debate for years, and there's still only one or two that genuinely do it well and have true traceability. How that traceability is accounted for today, even with all the technologies that we've got, you're talking about electrodes and whether they came from a wind turbine or a coal power station. It's witchcraft, to be honest. There's no practical way of actually being able to do this, right? So the level of data that we're starting to get, and unfortunately, all it's coming down to at the moment is just contracts, and the energy suppliers contract with where they procure the energy from, and whether that matches up to if I turn the kettle on or not in Oxfordshire doesn't matter. It ultimately it's if Oxfordshire is powered on a warm, still day with some overcast, it's very likely going to be coal-generated electrons going into my plug. But the fact that I'm with an energy supplier that has a PPA agreement to go and buy from a wind source, then they are ticking their box. So there is, whilst technology is going to play a massive role in it because of the availability of data, I think only two things are going to happen, to be honest. One is more innovators are going to come into this space and start to attack it with solutions such as blockchain, AI, machine learning, and everything, right? But actually, the biggest change that we have to do is policy, because at the moment it is far too easy to greenwash, certainly electricity. And that policy goes right the way back to the government level of how we price electricity. How are we going to incentivize customers to choose a greener energy supply when the price per kilowatt hour is exactly the same? And the off-gen price cap is exactly the same, right? Whether it's somebody buying it from a coal power station or from wind, it's exactly the same. The price cap has no allowance for it. The price of electricity across the whole country includes 20 or 30% worth of decarbonisation tax, which is effectively just offsetting the cost of gas, which is why in the energy crisis, when we had the Ukraine war start, the price of electricity shot through the roof because it was based on the price of gas. So there's some massive fundamental changes to how we price our electricity system that needs to happen before we actually can implement some real, true greenwashing policies and technologies.
Thank you very much, Tom. Lawrence, over to you. So your take on how can blockchain technology be utilized to trace the origin of energy sources and prevent greenwashing?
Okay, so I'm just going to add a bit to what Tom has said already. Like, it's very difficult when in terms of greenwashing and for companies to actually monitor where their energy usage is coming from, because mostly in the energy industry, what most people do right now is go for the green energy certificate, most major companies like Microsoft, Google, and the likes. And this is true corporate PPAs, definitely. And this is also where, when we are talking of in terms of monitoring greenwashing or using blockchain technology to actually follow up with this, we need more education in this instance. And when we're talking of education, not just as a company alone, but also educating the general populace, because most people lack the holistic understanding of the intensive use of technology, even blockchain itself. And while I know we've moved on from the water thing, but I just kind of want to add on that as well, that there's a current research that was carried out by MIT that says even the use of blockchain has increased the water consumption level, and also in terms of using blockchain to also monitor energy sources, and an increased use in training, that is training people about to know how to use blockchain to monitor how the decarbonization process, to also monitor greenwashing in supply chain. That was also carried out by MIT. Sorry, I kind of missed one part. This research was carried out by MIT states, and what came about from the training was that the total amount of emissions that was realized from the training was equal to you going on a round trip with a plane 300 times. So what I would say is, in terms of using blockchain technology, we still need more training in this instance. So for now, I would say we can still stick to using the corporate PPAs in this instance with the normal processes.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Darren, over to you.
From a water sector, it's quite interesting, because I was lucky enough in the first part of the year to go across to Valencia and actually see as they call it, a digital operation of how they're controlling some of the city's waste and also water supply. A little bit tentative to begin with. Would it be a true digital system? Would it be articulated in a way and shown in a way that you could really audit that piece of data going all the way through the business? And actually, they're pretty damn good at it. And when you're seeing on their screen about, they've got so many solar panels and they've got so many EV chargers, and that is only 98% of what the EV chargers take in. We are showing you the other 2% is coming from this power station down the road and things like that. We start to kind of believe that we can get there, but without the technology, nobody's going to believe us, because it's like a self audit. So actually, how do you generate that confidence with customers within the supply chain, which is so important? And I think it's that supply chain piece that is the biggest hurdle for us. How do you get that buy-in? How do you actually get that technology and the training, so every single company is within this technology, not just the really big ones that can really throw money at it? And I think that's the important piece. Because you could easily be misled with misinformation because they put a word like blockchain in, or they put a word in like greenwashing, audited. That's the bit where we need to get to. Yes, we were convinced when we went to Valencia, they understood it, but if you really got behind the screens, could you really believe it? So that's the bit for us.
Thank you very much, Darren. Graham, your take on blockchain technology.
So I guess I've seen a few sort of recent projects that might give me a bit of hope. I take Lawrence's point about energy consumption, and I think you've got to be really careful here. Not blockchain people tend to hear blockchain and think Bitcoin. You know what? Yeah, Bitcoin is really power intensive, but I think if you move away from sort of blockchain per se to distributed ledger technologies, particularly which are private permissioned sort of technologies, you don't have the same overhead costs from a compute and power sort of point of view. And I've seen some good examples recently. A company called Botanical Water, strangely, who's taking water or steam from food processing factories like tomato ketchup and such like, and sugar and people like that, and actually taking the water that comes off in steam, and they are processing it and bottling it and actually supplying water credits, which are going into an ecosystem to say this is a sustainable water, and that's getting sold. And people like Coca-Cola and Microsoft are buying those water credits because obviously they use a lot of water in their data centers. Yeah. So and Coca-Cola a lot of water in their actual production processes. So they're actually buying water credits to reduce their carbon footprint or their sort of environmental footprint, should I say. So I think that's sort of like some really interesting uses coming along. I think the other bit that I can't say too much about because I'm too close to it is the certification of renewable energies that's coming out. So probably starting with hydrogen first, strangely, looking at being able to provide certification of green hydrogen, i.e. hydrogen that's produced from renewable electricity through electrolysis, and that won't be for sort of, it won't be for consumer homes, it will be for industry, it will be for transport. So probably more pressures on Darren actually, because massive it takes 10 kilos of water to produce 1 kilo of hydrogen roughly. Yeah. So that's gonna be quite interesting, I think, coming out. But certainly that certification process, not because it needs a certificate, but it's where does that certificate go? Because that we're already seeing that the EU are starting to impose import tariffs based on carbon footprint of goods. Yeah, and I think unless you've got certifications through an entire ecosystem to prove the carbon footprint of goods, and scope 3 is going to be the biggest headache anybody's, scope 3 emissions is traceability and provenance is going to be the biggest headache anybody's dealt with, and so open to fraud. So I think to some extent the only way to do it is on some sort of private, sort of permissioned, sort of distributed ledger where you can selectively share, or have ask a question where you don't need the data, but you get a valid answer. So you go, it's like going into a bar and being asked for your date of birth to prove that you're 18. They don't need to know your date of birth. They just need to know yes or no, are you 18? So I don't need to know all of the data about that piece of steel, but how many grams of carbon did it use in the energy that made it? And that's where I think we're going to probably end up with that sort of distributed ledger technology, and it'll be across so many different products, steel, glass, sugar, food and drink. Probably not food, because I don't know that you can afford hydrogen to cook food.
Would be a costly one.
Yeah. Maybe as the price of hydrogen comes down from the current $5 a kilowatt hour a kilo, I think it is $5 a kilo. But yeah, anyway.
Thank you, Remy. Yes, Tom.
Tom,
that's a really interesting point about the trading of certificates and stuff. So we're starting to see carbon trading is something a real hot topic at the moment. It's actually recognised by the FCA as a proper kind of tradable market, which is good in some ways, but actually what we're seeing is that the commercial approach is overtaking the technical drive to actually do it properly. So an example I alluded to earlier was the grid scale battery stuff. So we literally go live there and fill it with 100 megawatts worth of battery, buy from the grid when it's really clean and windy and cheap, and sell it back to the grid to avoid them having to turn to coal power stations. We're at a point now, because the price of electricity started to drop a bit, where actually we make more money in carbon trading than selling the electrical back. So there we have a big corporate that does use a lot of carbon, and they need to offset that for their own ESG obligation. They pay us carbon trading fee to be able to offload that clean energy into the grid, where we then get a negative carbon trading back. That's more financially rewarding, which is nuts, because actually there's no incentive for that company that are paying us for carbon trade to actually do it properly themselves. They would sooner invest in carbon trading than the technology to be.
One assumes the technical losses mean that actually it's you created more carbon in a way.
Exactly. Yeah. So there is, and going back to my point I raised earlier about policy, that this kind of stuff is at this point where technology from commercial and technical world are moving a bit quicker than policy can.
Yeah.
So we've got this window now where there are so many loopholes to get away with it because of these emerging innovative commercial models as well as technology. There is a real risk that it becomes commercially easier than it is technically.
Yeah. And the customer I'm working with on the certification scheme is clearly aware of those, which is why they want to do this with hydrogen first, and then look at biogas, carbon capture, so CCUS, and then come back to electricity because they know that the system is being gamed in electricity, not for the sort of benefit of the UK PLC. So,
exactly. Yeah. Which is the whole. There's a lot of debate over whether the terminology of net zero is actually appropriate or not because of the word net in it. It's the whole point of this, isn't it? Really, the word net in it means that somebody can be as carbon intensive as they like, but if they've got their hand in their pocket, be able to go and offset it with net zero.
Yeah. It's a challenge.
Thank you very much. Graham, you did mention scope 3 emissions earlier and improving the provenance of energy sources. So third topic, Lawrence, if it's okay, I'll start with you on this one. In a decentralized renewable energy landscape, how can companies prove the provenance of their energy sources to address scope 3 emissions and avoid allegations of greenwashing? From your experience, if you've seen anything that you could share.
Oh, okay. So basically, I would say decentralized transactive energy systems do not experience widespread outages. I know it's not so common right now, is what most energy companies are looking to get into. But the major thing is if a consumer's energy source fails, that is the outage only impacts the consumer, and the system only the system places less stress on a centralized grid, that is maybe energy coming from the network, and in turn improves resilience. And this is very crucial for the future, I would say, and it's crucial also for business continuity. That's for certain companies. So in terms of using blockchain technology, it is easier to facilitate the transition to like a distributed energy landscape, reduces stress on the grid. And we also know that we are trying to reduce our carbon footprint due to the impending climate crisis, and sustainable energy sources are becoming more important than before right now. So that's why we need to start looking into like a kind of like what Bram said earlier. We need to look into kind of like a transactive energy systems that relies only on renewable energy sources. That is, and this in turn will do what reduce our society's useful harm on fossil fuel. And blockchain in turn also makes it easy to monitor this, and also makes it easier to engage in all this in these transactions, and monitor these transactions as well. And also it facilitates economic benefits of the systems. And also it's like what I mentioned in the beginning about education and driving interest and people being more open to technology. When you're able to measure your emissions in real time, knowing what you're using in real time, it kind of prevents greenwashing as well, and also drives customers' interest in renewable energy sources, I would say. So, and another point I would try to point out as well is, in as much as we are trying to do this, we also need to optimize our data centers. That is giving the customers an overview, like maximize efficiency in this instance.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Darren,
Yeah.
over to you. Your take on question 3.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? It's where do you get the right balance? I suppose is you know, how much do we have to keep? I suppose just sharing. How much do we have to keep being open and honest with not just our customers but our stakeholders as well around this? You know, because ultimately with anything around greenwashing, anything around decarbonisation, we need to be absolutely clear with everybody. How are we offsetting? How are we trying to decarbonise? And how are we trying to reach our net zero goal? Be absolutely clear from day one. If we're going to use technology, let's be clear what we're going to use. If we're going to use it by not putting lumps of metal in the ground, and that's a physical thing, and that's the only way we're going to achieve it, let's be absolutely clear. If we rely on third party, i.e. where we buy our energy from, where we do all it, then yes, we need sensible, audited approach so we're clear. Because if we go to investors, we need to be upfront and clear with those investors at the same time. It's the only way. So technology, blockchain is really, really vital for those kind of not just provide answers, but also to provide our own confidence that we can keep expanding and keep, you know, growth is there. We can't stop water. You know, we have to keep supplying water. How do we do that sustainably? We need to have all of those connected systems together, you know, and we've got to use technology to do that. We you know, we can decarbonise, but it's got to be in a sensible, controlled way, so it's clear.
Thank you very much, Darren. Tom, over to you.
So I think actually flexibility and asset deployment is going to be pretty significant, right? So at a large kind of corporate level, then to a degree you can have the right kind of PPAs in place with the right provider of energy, and you can tick a corporate box there. And I think actually to be able to truly prove how green your consumption is, one of the things that we've found in lots of recent studies is that consumer behaviour isn't enough. So incentivizing the consumers and businesses to use energy at a different time because it's greener and cheaper at particular times of the day isn't enough. There's not enough of a price point swing to incentivize a shop to turn its washing machines on. But actually, if you introduce assets to energy smart appliances with a degree of flexibility, such as batteries, with some optimization, you can take away at that SME and domestic level, right? Which lets 70% of the country's consumption is at that level, right? So if you can introduce assets at that level with innovative fundamentals and things like that, with a degree of flexibility and control, then you can align those assets to the customer's benefit, but also to the grid's benefit, flexibility. And then it doesn't matter because there is always going to be a point where if a particular corporate company that's got a big factory, for example, has a PPA agreement in with Drax for one of their wind farms, right? That doesn't matter if it's a still day on a Tuesday afternoon and the factory's still running. What would matter is if they had some asset control integrated into there so that they could have some batteries in for that, and those batteries can control a degree of flexibility. Yeah. So I think asset control and flexibility is going to be massive. There's loads of new standards coming in, and there's loads more flexibility markets coming into play as well. Last winter, we saw the launch of the demand flexibility service, where people were paid to have salads and candlelit dinner at 5 o'clock to avoid blackout, right? And that was the first time we saw that people were flexible assets, right? Because they were paid for £3 per kilowatt hour that they didn't use, that we thought they would never use, right? This year, that's going to scale up this winter in businesses as well. So everyone from cinemas and factories will be able to participate in this as well. So there is a chance that we'll have some behavioural change based on price points that will help the grid to decarbonise. But actually, assets is going to be key, because you can't rely on consumer business behaviour to price points and reaction to grid.
Thank you very much, Tom. Graham, over to you. Your take on topic 3, greenwashing and addressing Scope 3 emissions. Sorry, you are on mute.
Somebody had to do it, didn't they?
Yeah, it's every call.
So I think first thing is, I think the first thing on my mind is appropriateness, if you're to mean. So let's not get carried away with sort of a level of detail that goes far beyond what is needed to do to achieve the task. Yeah. So if you're trying to record energy for on a decentralized basis to show what energy source is coming, does that have to be every 5 seconds, every 30 minutes, every 24 hours? I think that there's a question over appropriateness of the granularity and the of information that's actually required. And I can take that even from I think let's take the water sector. There is a measure to know how many kilowatt hours are used per megalitre of water produced, and pumped, and that's when you look at that and then say, and what's the carbon footprint? Well, actually, water companies are pretty good with wind turbines, with solar, etc., with CHP systems on their wastewater treatment works, potentially with biogas to grid, etc. Potentially really good at how much energy do they import for their use rather than produce themselves. And I must admit, over the last 10 years there's been a massive change in that area, for water companies looking at how do they reduce, because what is it, 2-3% of UK energy? I think it's 2% of UK energy, 3% UK energy is used in the water sector, which is a frightening amount when you think about it. So how do they? All they really need to know is, I've used X amount of energy to run my business, and by the way, I've had to import Y, and I know that a percentage of that has been green, and some has been from from gas or whatever, and I think that's probably getting organizations to think about what their sort of their net sort of carbon footprint is probably more important than absolute for themselves absolute traceability. But if you're trying to engage with customers and potentially sell onwards your products that you're making, etc., or services, I think it's really important to have to think about probably 3 things. One is about how do you enable trust in that of the data that's flowing through and the information. How do you prove the provenance so that you can say actually nothing came in that didn't, that I know where everything came from. And I think the other one is about resilience, which is you still need to know that as a business you're going to be resilient in that, and have alternatives, and talking about organizations that are going to invest in hydrogen production. yeah, do you know what? They might have a wind farm or a solar farm or whatever that's supplying them, but at some stage, you know, if it's a cloudy sort of still day, they'll probably have to go and sort of have an input from the main grid, yeah, or from the DNO, and that will mean that they need to be able to, you know, say actually, yes, I've got resilience in my production capacity because people might still want that, but actually, yeah, this kilowatt hour or this kilogram of hydrogen wasn't, you know, 9 grams of carbon per kilowatt hour. So I think that's going to be really key. There was another point which I thought Tom made around storage, and I think that's probably going to be, that is one of the areas where at the moment it seems a little bit vague in terms of what goes in, what comes out. Was it green? Was it not green? Seems to be a little bit weak, and I think that, yeah, that provenance trust piece seems to be getting lost in that as well. But I think that provenance trust is probably the key thing to me, which is, you know, do you have the, and it doesn't have to be blockchain, it could be any sort of solution that provides some sort of data lineage to show where things came from. Yeah, it's just about whether that is open and public and shared, or whether it's enclosed. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Darren, you've raised your hand.
My point to kind of sort of join all this together is that I think it's going to be difficult for the companies to do it themselves. I think there's a big part here from the regulators joining together.
Yeah.
There's a huge burden on, you know, if I look at the water sector, let me just close my eyes a little bit and just go water sector. Well, actually, from a water sector point of view, water's getting scarce. So actually, we've got to pump more. So actually, our regulatory targets have to change. So are they being agile enough with the regulators? Do the regulators then understand that actually more customer money's got to be spent on energy to do that, et cetera, et cetera? And it's a massive, it's a mind spinner. It really is, in terms of where you go with this, in terms of where will that water come from? And actually, if we are pumping out of the ground because we've got to sink more boreholes, that's pumping. I'm afraid that's energy. Actually, how do you decarbonize that pumping? So actually, is it a local solar farm? Is it a local wind farm? And actually, do you become more localized rather than actually centralized? So again, it's for a regulator really to start to really try and knit this together.
Yeah, especially because that's a complex ecosystem, particularly when you take it. Yeah, the UK spends over £1 billion stopping wind turbines turning, yeah, every year. When actually, if you could store it or store the pumped water more effectively, pumped water is just an energy store. Yeah, it's got a potential energy value, and you just go, actually, can I pre-pump to areas when the electricity is really cheap? Because I would otherwise be curtailing the wind turbines. So sorry. Yeah.
No worries. Lawrence, you raised your hand too.
Yeah, so it's more of like a question for Tom, because he mentioned something very interesting for me when he spoke about flexibility, which has been done in the UK, but is something still not being done here in Ireland, and it's something we are looking at with the ESB to see if it's something that could be carried out. But one of the things we've noticed, like from surveys and research, is that when, in terms of people, turning off their power at a certain time, there are some certain bottlenecks that comes with it. And over time, there could be in the beginning, there could be a lot of positive responses from people eager to do it. But also as time goes on, interest drops down. And also from research, it's also noticed that maybe during football matches, response rate are usually very low. So I just wanted more ideas. Is it something he has encountered, or how has it been able to walk around this or solve the certain problems? Yeah.
So I think two things. First of all, it's really early, right? So that demand flexibility service was launched last winter. It was relatively successful, but only relatively because it was announced so late in the day. And we talk about change, energy suppliers being able to make a change to get ready to offer that service. It was only really the likes of us white labelling service to energy suppliers, as well as your real kind of innovators like Octopus that were able to do it properly. This year is going to be different because there's going to be a lot more energy suppliers doing it. So I think the uptake should be good. It's still going to be the same sort of price point of £3 per kilowatt hour. What it's going to fundamentally come down to, though, is the message, why this is happening. So bit of background, we learned about this idea from California in 2022 summer, I think, where they had a completely different approach, and they boycotted all GDPR rules, got everybody's mobile numbers, and when they were going to have a blackout because of air conditioning peaks, they text everyone saying, warning, 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 your power's going to go off, please don't use all the electricity, right? And it was scaremongering, but it worked. They didn't have one single blackout throughout the summer. They didn't financially incentivize people to not use energy at a particular time. They just scared them, right? Everyone got a text. Us being British didn't do that. and we thought, well, we'll pay them instead. Which, you know, £3 per kilowatt hour. If you're buying electricity in at 30 pence per kilowatt hour and you're getting paid £3 per kilowatt hour to not use it, that's pretty significant. The other thing that's quite significant is that applies to export as well. So if you have got a battery and you exported your 10 kilowatts out to the grid, that's £3 per kilowatt hour you're getting paid, as well as what you didn't want to use. So it is, at a domestic level, it was enough to put 150 quid worth in over winter, which last winter was a lot of money to a lot of people. So that's good. And the amazing thing is that is still a fraction of the cost that the national grid has to pay when compared to paying somebody to fire up a coal power station and use those reserves. So I think the service is fantastic. What it's going to come down to is how soft we are with messaging. And if we are messaging it as very, this is a fun thing and get your candles out and do some social media posts, you're right, it may die down. People may get bored of it. It's a bit of a fad, if you like. But if the message is really clear that we're trying to keep the lights on and we're trying to avoid blackouts, and this is really serious, and we don't want to be turning on our coal power reserves, then the messages needs to be aligned to that. One of the biggest frustrations this year is the service is meant to go live on the 1st of November, and the service is still not even approved by Ofgem today, 10-12 days out, and it's still not even approved by Ofgem. So what message does that send? If this is really, really important to the British public, why on earth is it still not even approved as a scheme? The likes of us and energy suppliers have invested so much time and money in getting this ready, and there is still a chance that Ofgem just don't approve it. There's been lots of press about it this week, and I think there will continue to be. But that you've got to get the message right with the public, because if you don't engage with the public that they're doing this for the right reasons, you're absolutely right. It will become a thing that was a bit of a social media thing for a while, and then it died.
Okay, thank you very much. And sorry, Afi and guys, like over 15 minutes late for my next meeting, so I had to run.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
I think I took permission from Hafi before the meeting started.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
No worries at all. Thank you very much,
Okay,
Lawrence,
and
for being here.
thank
We'll
you,
be in touch
everyone.
again.
Cheers.
Yeah, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Lawrence.
Cheers.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
thank
much.
you.
Bye.
Tom,
Ryan, do you want to
can
add
I
something?
can I follow up on that question with Tom, because I find that really quite fascinating, actually. I mean, I remember that at the time, but I suppose two things. One, could rather than do it nationally, would by DNO work? Because energy consumption is probably, it's still regional at the end of the day, where the stresses will be, rather than national. Would it be better to do it by DNO?
Yeah, I think that was definitely one of the suggestions. National Grid ESO saw the benefit in doing it nationally because of public engagement. Also, I think the other really difficult ethical thing they have to challenge with is if they give people in Scotland the ability to have £3 kilowatt hour back in their pocket for not using energy in an energy crisis, why somebody isn't solely not allowed it. So there's a big political reason why this needs to be nationally as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Not that it's right, but I can sort of understand.
Yeah.
I can sort of understand that. And I guess the follow up is almost sort of, can we see that situation hitting the water sector? You know, in terms of. Well, I was just thinking at peak times of drought or whatever, particularly say in Anglian water, you know, sort of like actually, you know, can we stop when it's been not this year because it never stopped raining this year, but last year, you know, it was a tough time at certain times in terms of, I remember up at Northumbrian water, there were days where they were really close to what they'd got in the supply for
well,
water.
one of the things I was going to ask Darren is, if you think back to what the electricity system has done with time of use tariffs, which is primarily because, you know, the Economy 7 is the most familiar tariff, right? And that's because it's more expensive to generate electricity between 7 and 12, right? So the implementation of storage features and the alignment of time of use tariffs was to help the grid settle, right, and avoid the peaks. Do you think if the smart water metering rollout does happen with earnest, that we could start to see time of use tariffs on water?
I think that's why I raised the issue around the regulator.
Yeah.
Because they play such an important part at the moment, you know, to help with the supply of water, to make sure it's sustainable. You know, we're building one of the biggest pipelines. You know, we're taking water all the way from North Lincolnshire near the Humber and bringing it all the way down to Colchester. You know, and in between we're dropping water off at certain parts for it. You know, we're building 2 new reservoirs. You know, haven't done anything for 10, 20 years in terms of those kind of things. It will take 10 years to build those reservoirs. Yeah, they're big planning expenses. We need the regulator to really support us in these areas.
Yeah,
and I think that's the mindset. That is the mindset change.
Do you think off what are following the trend of what the electricity and gas have done with water?
No, I think their mindset is to try and get as much value from the pound as they can.
Yeah.
And
I'm not suggesting at all that what we've done in the energy industry has been successful, by the way.
Yeah, but it's literally, can you get as much efficiency from that pound as you can from everything that you do first? That's their focus, you know, and it probably will be for the next AMP as well. So the next AMP period for us, you know, starts in a year's time. You know, our business plans have gone forward. They're huge business plans across the sector. You know, massive investment. You know, water industry has not seen any of these investment levels at all. You know, you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of apprenticeships having to go through and be built just to get the skill levels right to take these business plans forward. That's never seen it within this sector. Never.
Yeah.
I think that just, it sort of fills me with dread in a way, because I know sort of, you know, the energy sector, the water sector, the gas sector, the battle for talent, to help rebuild some of the infrastructure that's required, is probably one of the biggest challenges. And particularly when you sort of start to look at, you know, sort of like from my world, how do you use information in that world? Well, when you're looking to recruit people, you know, sort of like that are, you know, really good data scientists, etc., you're fighting with the banks, with the likes of Google and Microsoft and ourselves and everybody else, and it's like water company or Facebook type sort of job decisions, and that's not an easy battle to win.
That's where the cross collaboration stuff is just missing, right? Isn't it? Because if you look at the energy industry, so we've got 5 years ago we had 120 engineers on the book. We've now got 850. and that can't be sustained, right? Because we've got 850, which is an inflated workforce of engineers nationally, because they are rolling out smart meters, right? And they're going into people's houses and they put smart meters in. That smart meter rollout is meant to finish in 2025, right? So it's not, but 2027, let's say, right? What do we do with those 800 engineers? We stop crashing out smart meters. And at the same time,
EV charging points.
Well, but the difference is the skill set. If you compare the skill set of a meter engineer to a water engineer, they are very, very similar, right? The gap to go from a meter engineer up to fitting electric vehicles, chargers, batteries, solar panels is massive.
Yeah,
it's massive. So there is a huge, and we went in for a couple of tenders recently around water, primarily because we saw that as a home for our engineers in a few years' time. We've got to start having some bigger picture country level thinking here, because the infrastructure that we've built for the energy industry is just going to dwindle and disappear. We'll have massive redundancies at the same time that another industry is trying to find this workforce.
Yeah.
2025 is, although some have started early, 2025 onwards for water metering. That's when you get your staff ready for that, because that's Portsmouth have come out, Southern Water have released their RFI. Anglian is due November time, I think. They're all. Thames has already done it, but I'm not quite sure what they're trying to do. There's loads of them coming out.
And then if you do get to a point where we do have some proper cross collaboration, one of the other activities in the energy industry, you'll love this, is all of the smart meters we've deployed in basically everywhere south of Manchester have got 2G and 3G communication hubs on top of them.
Yeah,
that's being turned off, so they could go out and replace them all in 2028, September 28. So we're again going to have engineers that are adequately qualified to fit smart meters going into every home in the south of England, central and south England. At the same time as the water industry is trying to roll out smart meters, there must be an opportunity to do some collaboration there and do it all at the same time.
Yeah, I guess what would be really interesting is whether the Zigbee on 868. Sorry, I'm going too technical now. Whether Zigbee on 868 spectrum would actually reach down a 30 inch well. Yeah. Which is potentially because you are fighting the laws of physics here, because quite often they've also got a metal cap on the top, which is whoever's idea that was.
I mean that would be really clever thinking if we could sort that out and have one communications platform for the country. But I was just thinking purely from an engineer. If an engineer is going to knock on somebody's door, and another engineer is going to come along a week later, why not do it all together?
Yeah. Thank you, guys. We have just one more topic. I know we have a few minutes left, but what technological advancements are needed to replace the traditional spreadsheet-based methods and enhance the traceability of data in supply chain for sustainability and operational improvements? It's a bit of a long one. I'll post it on the chat as well. But Tom and Darren, you're taking also Graham, if you could add something for this topic too.
I think we're at a point, to be perfectly honest, where we're just waiting for the big guns to tell us what the solution is. So much of our IT strategy, and certainly in kind of database areas and stuff, is driven by AWS, right? That's our partner. Whatever AWS come in and deliver next, and whatever they talk to us in our bilaterals or whatever about what the next thing is, where the rest of the industry is heading, that ultimately forms it. We're not in a position where we're thinking of the next big thing of how to do things. We are so heavily reliant on these massive players to come in, because there are our infrastructure partners. It's always their role really to come in and help us to transition and innovate.
And it's the standard. Yeah, sorry, Tom.
No, go on.
I was going to say it's the standardization of that data ingestion as well. You know, there's an awful lot of non-interoperability that we need to have a look here, because from sensor providers we don't get standard data ingestion. So actually, where do we put it? That's why we're in spreadsheet world. We just don't know how to put it into a model, data model, etc. We've got to build all of these different things. And as you say, AWS are really defining it. Microsoft are defining whatever they need to do with us. We're stuck. We are really stuck in the middle.
You, Graham?
Yeah, I think there's something. I think for starters, part of the challenge is making sure that you've got some sort of data model that is more around the metadata rather than the data itself. Yeah, particularly basing it on sort of standard metrics in terms of if I'm measuring volume, it's going to be it's a meter, because a liter, because I can convert every other measure from that. If it's and just being able to go across those sort of conversions of things, but also and I've seen this in the sort of the digital twin world, and I hate that phrase because digital twins mean so many things to different people, which is just being able to start to if I'm saying I've got a pump, well, what does that mean? What are the standard elements on a pump? And just being able to define that sort of architecture of pump has got a rotation speed, it's got a location, it's got a power consumption, it's got vibrations on it, it's all of these sorts of things. So just being able to define that, and not everybody will provide you with every bit of data because they don't. Yeah, but as long as I know that the bits of data are standard and common where they've been provided, and that's and do it one bit at a time, because trying to model that sort of, you're going to try and model the universe, and try and solve world hunger. So do your data models one bit at a time that are in a way that you can, and if you start by processing the metadata at that level and work everything from there, then actually you can make changes over time, because you can add data elements. Oh, you know what? This pump can also provide, the temperature of what it's pumping. Oh, yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah, or the temperature of the motor, so there's power in it. So, so you can do that at a metadata level, and then everything else up to that point didn't have that data, so that's fine. So I think focusing on systems that can do that, there are quite a few out there that are doing quite well. So I'd sort of start on that point, but also that data lineage as well. Where did the data come from? Was it something that was mine? Was it something that was passed to me? So understanding where data comes from. So how much can you trust that individual bit of data? That's the bit that I think a lot of people forget about. And yeah, you're right. Sort of like we were Microsoft and AWS, and I have views on which one's easier to work with. I have feeling that some are playing a defensive strategy, while others are playing a sort of disruptor strategy. And it's more interesting to work with one of those than the others. but yeah, I think. But I think the other key thing for me is getting the it's been said before, getting the sort of the political policies in place as well to make sure that I know what I'm doing in this space. And that we've mentioned GDPR, but sort of like people always worry about that sort of, how do I, if it's in a spreadsheet, if I don't want to have it in a spreadsheet, if I'm in a system, I've got all the GDPR. No, you don't. If it's data, it's data. You've got potentially got GDPR issues, wherever it is. In fact, I think it's probably harder to control if it's in a spreadsheet. Yeah.
Yes, Tom?
I think, just on kind of this, we talk a lot about the monopolization of these big cloud services, Google and Microsoft and AWS. If you go back 10 years or so, one of the benefits, you would have argued, was that all of the alternatives was fitted to the business's model. And so if we went and knocked on the door, they would have come in and whatever we said. When you now go through transformation projects to put stuff into the cloud and into AWS, you got no chance. It's so uniform. The biggest part of that transformation program is getting everything that you used to do into a uniform model. So by the fact that you are starting to see a monopoly, the massive benefit is that everyone is starting to have more of a uniform approach to how they manage this thing. you've got 2 or 3 choices. Whereas for days of strong arming a company because you're a big PLC into building a system around how you use it, I've long gone. The miles away from you've driven into these uniform ways of working, which is proven as well. So you can scale it.
Yeah, although I mean, normally you'd sort of argue that you lose some sort of, innovative capability to be different, but I'm not sure that you do.
Yeah.
From my evidence, particularly with those organisations that you mentioned that are effectively providing a platform, rather than a specific solution, I don't think you do lose that ability to still innovate and be different, which I think is the key.
The brilliant model, which I'm trying to replicate with energy data, is AWS. If you look at all of their new products and the new services that they launch, are all things that their customers have innovated.
Yes,
right. So you kind of just create this little circular economy of innovation. It just keeps repeating itself. That's what I'm trying to do with innovation.
We get paid money to help to try to do that, to work with customers to create something that they can then resell. And
exactly.
we actually get discounts on our fees of what we pay AWS.
Exactly, and that's what I'm doing with
business
energy
model.
data now. Is energy. I'm giving energy data away to startups and innovators, and I will benefit from whatever they come up with. So
Thank you very much. Graham, any closing remarks before we wrap up?
No, not particularly. It's been a fantastic conversation and interesting to get the different views from different parts of the market. So I can only thank you for that. It's always useful because my task is to learn every day. And I've learned quite a bit actually. So thank you very much.
Tom and Darren, then have you learned something? I hope you did. Yeah.
Likewise. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you
really good.
Thank you very much for being here today. We've got some feedback all scheduled. We're looking forward to those. I really hope we have an opportunity to host you again in the future. Graham, thank you for supporting, and also Fujitsu for backing up this meeting.
No worries. Really enjoyable. Thank you, guys.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Cheers,
Good to meet you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.